My name is Brad McElwain. I am a member of the Family Engagement Office at Wake Forest. Our office is very proud to be bringing you tonight a panelist of our experts on the career and job market from the OPCD office. We appreciate everybody's time on both ends, and we know I think this will be beneficial with graduating seniors and folks looking for jobs or maybe looking for maybe a change in what they found. I think you'll get some great guidance tonight, some great information. Before I introduce Andy, I want to make one mention. We are going to be taking questions from the Q&A feature, which is at the bottom of the screen, and we'll try to answer those questions either through the panelists and their comments or maybe directly with you, depending upon what might be most appropriate. So don't worry about the size or whatever the question may be. We want to be able to help answer that. So I want to be able to turn things over now to Andy. Andy Chan, as you probably know, has been at Wake over a decade and has built an incredible office that has enabled us to be one of the best career service departments in the country. And we're very proud to be able to bring that group to you tonight. So, Andy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Brad. I appreciate the nice introduction, and hello to everyone out there. This is an odd sort of format because we actually have a Brady Bunch set of panel right in front of you, and we can't see you. So it's difficult for us to know exactly how you're feeling about what we have to say, but we're hoping that whatever we say will be really helpful to you and to your students. Brad said one thing about us having been fortunate enough to have an amazing career office, one of the best in the country, and I also, as you know that Brad's team, Minta, and the whole Family Engagement Office is also known as one of the best in the country, and we're really fortunate to be able to work with them and have them working with you and your families too. As part of having a great team is just have great leaders. And on our team, I have Stuart Meese, who oversees all of our employer relations efforts, as well as our office operations, as well as our data and technology. Allison McWilliams, who oversees the Alumni Personal and Career Development Center, as well as our Mentoring Resource Center, serving both. The Mentoring Resource Center serves both students and alumni. And then Heidi Robinson, who I know many of you know from being the designer of our career courses and overseeing all the career education and coaching for all the students in the college. We have our presidential fellow, Catherine Laws. She just started this year during the summer, be part of the class of 2020. And Kayleen Gore, both students who actually have gone through this process this summer, where probably like everyone in class of 2020, pretty shocked back in March and trying to figure out what to make of it, and finding their way right now through this whole season and trying to go the ups and downs that they've experienced. They'll be able to share a little bit with you. So we're going to start with about 5 minutes from each one of my team members, and then we'll head in talking to Catherine and to the students a little bit. So I'll start with Stuart first. Stuart knows a lot about the employment market. You actually have seen, and if you haven't, you should go to our website. He has a video he puts out every week that's the state of the market, and it's actually gotten out to all the employers. We sent it to all the students, and it's a video telling basically everyone like what is happening with the job market right now. And it is so popular that companies send it on to hundreds and hundreds of their employees because they find it of such great value. And I'm really appreciative of what Stuart has put together, what he's doing with our team. So Stuart, tell us about the state of the current job markets for students who graduated this past May. They graduated basically at the start of this COVID pandemic, and it's really been tough. And I know the market and what you read in the media sounds really challenging and almost like horrific. And I was curious, like, what do you see given all the different things you see and employers you talk to?
Well, it certainly is ahead. I think we all realize that. But I think many of the companies are very bullish right now in terms of what they may be seeing in 2021, as evidenced by them coming on campus now and looking at their pipelines. I think that the biggest thing that students can be doing right now, if you have a student that is in this boat, is really to enhance the application numbers that students are going to, and maybe be looking at those jobs that what we call option B opportunities. So I'll share some statistics later, but for instance, you know, if you want that job in marketing, it's going to be very difficult right now, but there are plenty of opportunities in sales, which could eventually get to that. So are students really looking to pivot right now? I think that would be a question.
That's a great start. So talk to me a little bit more. So are there particular jobs or career or industry sectors that you see opportunities that maybe you're surprised how many there are and how healthy they talk about those sectors are?
Yeah, Andy, you know, we talked to a lot of different folks that are working on this, looked at a lot of data. One group that I really appreciate is a company called Rocks Grad Staffing in the Washington, D.C. area. They've been a Inc. 5000 fastest growing company, I think 4 or 5 years in a row. And they specialize in basically placing recent college graduates in the greater DC area. And they report that what they're seeing with their clients, the companies, as well as their students, there's a lot of success in the customer service and administrative space, property management, title, mortgage sectors, as you would imagine, based off of the interest rates right now. But then if you look at much more broader data, like Burning Glass, software development is still hot right now. It's a little bit harder to pivot to that. However, accounting, sales reps, business development, project management are roles that are in demand now. We're seeing companies in the healthcare sector, specifically the Anthems, Humana, Bayer, government consulting, the Deloittes, Northrop Grumman's, and certainly those companies that are in logistics like Amazon have a lot of openings, particularly right now. And I think some of the certifications that companies are looking for right now, especially back to the DC market, if you've got a security clearance, that is prime right now for companies. They're looking for that. Anything project management, certified teachers, CISPA, Certified Information Systems Security Professional. Those are some top certs that are out there. But then just any general, what I would call productivity tool, whether it's data or, again, project management or any type of customer service tools, they are in demand when you start looking at the number of postings that are out there.
One of the things that you and I talk about is how do you help a student who is maybe a sort of traditional liberal arts student who didn't study that in college, maybe didn't pick those things in their summer jobs or, you know, their clubs. How would you go about learning some of those things so you could actually be marketable and, you know, be able to speak the language on about a lot of those different areas?
Good point. And I think a lot of companies now are looking for folks that have some form of billable skills. I think that's why you see software development and sales being so popular, because they can bill out the time of the software developers or the salespeople can generate revenue. I actually think that liberal arts students are probably the best equipped to gain some additional skill sets that may be out there. And there is, whether it's Mark Cuban or many others, have advocated on behalf of liberal arts majors. And I think the market is becoming more and more aware of it. If you look at some of our top-notch financial firms or consulting firms, you'd be surprised at how many are hiring non-business students right now and what that actual percentage is. So a lot of it is just perception or confidence in thinking that the liberal arts student can compete. Once they get that confidence and you overcome any type of branding issues that a company may have associated with a liberal arts college or major, you'll see that they can compete very well. And as I alluded to, there's so many different tools out there. And many of the companies now are offering free tools online to get certifications. So it's really up to the student now of how they can kind of add on additional skill sets to their more formal education that they've received at Wake Forest.
Great. So I'm gonna ask you one last question. You know, there's certain careers or industries that college students typically find really popular and they want to go into. I think of like sports and entertainment and media and things like that, fashion. if you were a student who want to go in one of those areas, like in general, are there jobs? And if there aren't, like what would you say might be a good pathway in terms of what you do now to eventually get into one of those jobs later?
Right. Well, in any market economy in the sports or entertainment business, it's about networking and who wants it the most, because quite frankly, there's a lot of people that are willing to work longer hours for less pay. So there's always going to be that supply of people in the bottom level that can come up. But one thing that I shared in the most recent market update and some of our analysis is we get a lot of people that want to be in that kind of advertising, media, and PR. And so we have a system called Handshakes where companies post jobs, our students go to it, and we can get very rich data during this time in regards to applications, postings, et cetera. So year over year, so from July to about mid-September of 2020 compared to 19, the advertising, media, and PR opportunities that were either naturally generated there or we sourced from other places into the system was down 6.2% year over year. And then the applications for those jobs were up 463%.
Wow.
So if that's not an economics market supply and demand issue, I don't know what is. However, sales jobs, there's a lot of opportunities right now, as I said, because of wanting to generate revenue related to that. And in some cases, if you're getting into marketing and it's about big data and analytics, if you could somehow pivot, maybe get an extra certificate of somewhere or some additional skill set, data analytics positions that same time period are up 85% during that time. Now, people are still applying to it, but there's a lot more of those to go around right now. So you do have to pivot during this time. You have to really understand the market and what it's willing to give you at this time.
That's great. I like that. I thought the answer was spot on. And I can definitely, I mean, many of you know me, my middle child, a daughter, just graduated class of 2020 out of college, and being a psychology and philosophy major, one of the things I pointed her to, she wasn't sure what she wanted to do, but I pointed her to LinkedIn Learning, and she went and picked up some background in Python as well as in data analytics. And it's not where she necessarily wanted to work in, but it just gave the employer sort of a sense that, wow, you actually have a lot of tools in your toolbox. So that's really interesting that you're both like really great critical thinker, but you actually are comfortable with data. And this is one of those things that honestly, you can do a LinkedIn Learning course in less than a week. So I do think that's one of those things that people have to be willing to consider. All right, Stuart, we'll come back to you later. There's actually a question in the Q&A if you want to go in and answer it. You might be able to type in an answer without us having to ask you live. Thank you for asking questions in there. We'll do our best to answer questions while we're talking. I'm going to go over to Allison now, who oversees our Alumni and Personal Career Development Center, as well as the Mentoring Resource Center. Allison, you offer a lot of programs and resources to alumni. What are the ones that you would recommend that are really pertinent for our recent grads?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. First of all, I think it's important to note that we created this entire Alumni Personal and Career Development Center with a focus on our youngest alumni. So really focused on that transition out from senior to post-college life. We support alumni all through the life stages, but that's really where our focus is. And so if you go to our website, you will find there is access to one-on-one coaching. We do resume feedback. We provide tons of strategy and tips on navigating the career path. We do tons of webinars and online courses. We have launched a job search strategy boot camp to take these young professionals through the process to really get strategic about their plan, and that ends with some focused coaching and feedback from our team. Lots of focus on networking and mentoring and how do you get connected, particularly to the Wake Forest network, but really anybody in your life who can help you. And I think what's really important is, we have a bunch of programs and opportunities that people can opt into, but also a high focus on sort of just-in-time access. So that's how we've framed out our website. So when you have that question, when you have that need, you can go there and hopefully find an answer. to help you.
So Allison, one of the things I know you've spent a lot of time with young alums. I mean, I think you have thousands, you know, we track the metrics, thousands of alumni are actually utilizing your service every single year. And you've been doing it now for almost as long as I've been at Wake Forest, like probably a decade. You have a really good sense for when alumni have difficulty, young alums, you know, after college, having a hard time finding a job. What are some of those things that are the big barriers? And then once you go through them, what are those things that you'd recommend to how to break through those barriers?
Yeah, you know, it's some of the stuff that Stuart was just talking about. I think there's 4 things that I could easily identify. Number one is the expectation piece. So either your expectations are too broad. So it's this idea of, oh, I can do anything or I will do anything, which actually ends up being super paralyzing and leads to sort of this inability to move forward. Or they're too narrow, right? Like I absolutely have to work for this PR agency in New York City. And to Stuart's point, right, that like, well, maybe if we broaden that out a little bit, there'd be a greater opportunity available to you that can get you on that path and moving forward. The second one is the network piece. So we know that upwards of 80% of all opportunities are gotten through connections, through that network. And so how are you building those personal and professional relationships that are going to help you through the process? The third is your documents, right? How are you telling your story through your resume, through your LinkedIn? Are you telling the most crisp and strategic story that you need to tell to get you in a position to get in front of that employer? And then with all of that, you know, what's your plan, right? I was having a conversation with a young alum today, and that's what we talked about. Let's put a plan in place, right? So that we can set some goals and clarify those expectations, identify the people, where are the opportunities, and actually move forward to get you where you want to be. So those are the 4 things that I would say.
Great summary. Well, one of the things that I think about is we are called Alumni Personal and Career Development, which is more than just a job search center and more than just help you find a job. It's actually more about really building a great life. And can you talk a little bit about some of the kinds of programs and resources you offer to alumni? Because maybe some of the people out there, their students already have a job, they're already starting to work. Maybe they actually have to live at home or navigating that. Like, what do you do for those types of people?
Sure. And I think this is what really differentiates us from other schools. I always say, you know, the career resources are kind of the baseline. And we provide that, right? So we provide that coaching and that resume feedback and all of that. But we've put a pretty strong focus on this sort of Wake Forest model, which is who are you, what matters to you, how are you aligning your choices and decisions with how your values and your purpose, and how do you think about creating a life of intention moving forward? And so it's, I think, a much more holistic model, and we like to walk beside these young alumni as they're doing that work. And so we do a lot of mentoring groups and certainly one-on-one conversations. A lot of our coursework sits in this space. A few years ago, I wrote a book called 5 for Your First 5 that, frames out this competency model that we've developed and actually sort of guides the work that we do and also the work that we feel like young alumni should be doing. So it's, what are the 5 things that you need to master in your first 5 years after college? And then we do a lot of outreach and engagement around those 5 things. And a chunk of it is the work. It's actually where we start with the 5 for Your First 5. It's called Do the Work. But there's also a ton of stuff in there about, you know, how are you building a life of intention? And how does that intersect with the work that you're choosing to do?
Thank you, Allison. And I can't say enough how amazing that book, 5 for Your First 5, is. So if you have an opportunity to go on Amazon and get it, I know that when a student, after they've graduated, they're way more interested in reading that book than while they were students. So I can speak to that with my own child, that I was showing it to her before she graduated. She's like, Dad, I have no interest in this. And then I gave it to her like this summer. She thought it was like a gift, like a treasure. She was like, oh my gosh, I really need this because I got to figure out what I'm going to do. So take a look at it. This is the moment that you have to actually share something really special. I always joke with Allison, she put all the advice I give to people and she put it in her book. So now she's got all the credit. I love it. She's awesome. So definitely get it. And also, if you read this other book, it's actually The Defining Decade. It's a book that we had a lot of people read for a while. And what we found is that it did ask a lot of big questions and it gave some good general advice. But at the end of the book and throughout the thing, the discussions, they'd always say to Allison, so what do I do now? Like, you gave me all this information. Now I'm scared. Like, I got to make the most of these 20 years, 20 to 30 years old, but what do I do? And Al said, I'm going to give you the roadmap. And so this book is the roadmap. So I highly recommend it. So yeah. Thank you, Allison.
I had, so the fellows with Catherine the other day, we were working through this book and I asked them how it struck them. And one of the fellows said, it was like being hit in the face with a cold, wet fish. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to quote you on that. And he said, no, but actually that's what I needed, right? It's like, I needed this sort of dose of reality and thinking through kind of what I'm doing. And it was actually perfect and spot on. So I sort of love that.
Nice. Very good. All right. Well, let's go over to Heidi. Heidi, talk to us a little bit about like what you're seeing with the recently graduated class of 2020, and also maybe shed a little bit of light on, I've talked about it before, we talk about, almost everyone has a job within 6 months of graduation. And so people oftentimes feel like at graduation, like I should have had a job. And if I don't, like something's the matter and what do I do? And especially during this year. So maybe you can talk about sort of the emotional state of how our 2020 grads are doing.
Oh, I think that's really important. I think that, to your point, Andy, there is always this expectation that I'll walk across that stage and directly into the job that I have landed. And I think those feelings were amplified. The disappointment if you didn't have that job was amplified this year because it looked bleak. And so many of our grads were actually receiving this message from both culture and from media that there wasn't anything out there, so why apply? And so a lot of folks got stuck. And what we actually saw was not only that, but they were having to survive their senior year online, when at Wake Forest, that's not our way. And so there was a lot of exhaustion, there was a lot of burnout, and then there was just a lot of overwhelmed by everything, all the messages that were coming their way. I think that was really the mindset. And we did a lot of student panels in those months, right? April, May, trying to sort of get our hands around what it was our students needed. And so I think that one of the things that we have seen is that there's just been there's been a lot of success. It's just come a little bit later than we might have thought it was. And in fact, what I would say is that a lot of the students were actually are surprised when we tell them that we're just a little bit farther ahead in successfully having landed students this year than we were last year. And our grad school acceptance is just slightly higher than it was last year. And so those success stories are also the ones that our students need to hear, sort of have that momentum, get a little bit more of that internal fire to go ahead and start pushing forward for themselves.
That's great. One of the things that you and I've talked a bit about is in this moment, people feel very alone and isolated because, you're just not able to have the social connections you have with people like you used to. One of the ideas you wanted to throw out there was how if the parents have a student out there, how they might actually consider some kind of reconnection with you and with other students. What is it that you're thinking of? And maybe we can actually just make that offer, put it on the table so people know.
Oh, you just read my mind. That is something that I would love to do. In fact, we did a little bit of this early on in the summer. And what students said was, hey, could you do this again? And we would love to. And that's really one of the best parts of this is when students are feeling isolated, they think they're the only ones who are going through this process. And then there's almost like a shame piece that comes with that. I'm the only one who hasn't landed something. I'm the only one who hasn't, started to move forward. And it's just simply not true. And in fact, we will go ahead and I'm excited for you to hear from our students who are here this evening. But what happens when students get together and actually share those stories, it gives them some confidence. It reminds them that it's not just them. And then they actually begin to network with one another. I will never forget one student saying, I'm really interested in sports. Another young woman saying, oh, you know what? My brother works for this baseball team in Boston. Have you heard of them? Well, yeah, he'd heard of them. And so there's some of that piece that happens too, because it's very Wake Forest. So absolutely. And I think that those are some of those beautiful moments where we can actually lift one another up.
Great. Thanks, Heidi, for mentioning that. So I'm going to pass it to you to let you talk to the students about their experiences, because I think that'll shed a lot of light on what the experience is like and what to do, but also for you to maybe pull out what are the things that maybe either you would say to parents to help motivate their students or help their students, and also what the students would, what the recent grads would say to the parents to say, here's the kind of thing that would work for me. So that'd be great. I'll let you take over here for about 15 minutes or so.
Oh, thank you. And I just want to welcome Kaylin and Cooper, and thank you both for taking your evening to be with us. And instead of me introducing you, I would much rather have you introduce yourselves with your name, your hometown, and what your major was at Wake.
All right, so my name is Cooper Hearn. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I graduated with a degree in business management with a marketing concentration.
Hi everyone, my name is Kaylin Gore. My hometown is Marietta, Georgia, and I graduated with a BA in sociology with a concentration in business and society.
So Kaylin and Cooper, you heard me sort of just describing what we were hearing in panels. You were actually living it and living it with your peers. I wonder if you could just sort of speak to what your mindset was like back in May and back in April. I think, Kaylin, you and I have had some conversations that April was just as hard as May. But I open that up to the two of you and would just like to have everyone hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say it was kind of a low point for me, compared to where I am now mentally. A bunch of anxiety amongst me and my friends. And obviously with COVID, hitting the job market, just kind of knowing that would make things a lot more difficult. I had friends at the time who had jobs for months. And at that point, I didn't even know what industry or what role that I wanted to be involved in. So really for me, it was just, trying to stay positive and keep in touch with, my career coach in the office and just, keep working at it.
And Cooper, one of your initial passions was the music industry, is with the music industry. And of course, that's one of the industries that's really suffered. And so tell me a little bit about how you sort of pivoted and changed sort of your path a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I didn't get a music background at Wake Forest, and that's something I would still like to do. I love music, and I think that would be a dream job for me. So I think a big thing is just knowing that with this internship that I recently got, I have the opportunity to learn. I can just develop skills over the years that I can then segue into hopefully doing what I love.
And Kaylin, I'm coming to you in just a minute, but Cooper, I'm just going to finish up by asking you one more question. You just talked about the fact that you are starting as an intern, and in so many industries, that is the way in, especially in places that are highly competitive. So will you talk just for a little bit about sort of how you were introduced into the company that you are in now?
Yeah, so, I kind of spent the months of May, June, July, just constantly applying for things that were posted, which is definitely a good thing. But especially in this time, I can remember, so many of those postings, just entry level jobs that required years of experience, and that was really scary to see. But what really did it for me was just networking, and I kind of ramped up on the amount of people that I was calling and just having conversations with, and really all it took was one introduction. That led to another, and I was given an opportunity at Novant Health, and it'll have a good chance to learn and hopefully grow through it.
And I suspect be hired as your internship comes to an end. Just for fun and games, since we're speaking to parents, do you mind sort of talking about the role that your parents played, sort of the introduction process, or just connecting and opening doors?
Yeah, they were very pivotal. First of all, they encouraged me a lot, and I would get down at times, but they wouldn't let me. But it was my dad who connected me to a friend that then led to that connection that landed me my job. So that was, and he was very encouraging to me and I was always trying to help. And, that's what ended up putting me in the position I am now. So, yeah.
Thank you. So opening those doors. Yes, Andy, I see you.
Cooper, one other question. If you think about the manner in which your father made that introduction for you, one, did you feel guilty that, oh, my dad has to make the introduction, or did you have a way of thinking about it? They're like, no, this is just what you have to do. That's probably first. And second, is there anything in particular that he either said to you or he said to the person who he introduced you to that you felt really comfortable with, that made you feel like this is just a fine thing to do, as opposed to sometimes young people can feel like, I don't want my parent to open the door for me. I don't want to sort of take advantage of that. Like, how did you think about that? And what kind of things did he say or do that helped you with that?
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely a big thing. Was, I'm one of those people. I kind of like to carve my own path, but it really came to fruition in the fact that I was having these conversations with people, and I was trying to do the learning, and I was doing the talking, and so really I just kind of look back on it as just a very important segue that it still wasn't handed to me. The opportunity was presented, but then I had to kind of jump on it. And then it was definitely super reassuring that while I was having those conversations, those people were just super excited to just talk, and it's just good to know that people really care about those of us that are finishing college these days.
I love that. He was able to open a door, but you're the one who had to walk through, like turn the knob, push the door open, and go in and get it done yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Kaylin, I'm going to just move on over to you. Thank you, Coop. So Kaylin, I will remember when you received what we called our love notes to our seniors that we wrote in April. Do you want to speak to a little bit about that, and then kind of where you were and what was going on for you?
Sure. So I was applying to jobs since August. So whenever April came around, whenever May came around, and we were back at home and I still didn't have a job, it was really, really tough for me. And it even got to a point where I couldn't even get out of bed, going on for weeks. And I think part of that, and you touched on this already, Ms. Heidi, but I think that at Wake, there is kind of an ideal where you kind of set a standard for yourself to have a job secured by the end of fall semester. And while we know, and I heard this, my friends heard this, that the stats say that Wake seniors and college seniors in general, majority of them don't get hired until spring semester or within 6 months after graduation. But there was enough. I saw enough people around campus and on LinkedIn to kind of assume, okay, I know they said that that's the norm, but I feel like I've seen enough Wake seniors get a job earlier than that, to where I feel like, okay, I should be able to do that same thing. I should be able to get a job at that same time too. And so whenever fall came and went, spring semester came and went, graduation came and went, summer's going, I'm like, okay, I'm getting outside of the normal range at this point. And so it just felt like kind of how you explained earlier, it's just overwhelming. I felt like, I also, with like similar to Cooper, I also had other friends who already had a job already, way, way, way in advance. And so it was tough, but I think staying connected with my friends through Zoom, they're very, very supportive, and also my mom and my other family members, just kind of validating those feelings for me was very, very helpful.
Now, Kaylin, you said you had to get off the couch because you were tired of cooking and cleaning every time while your mom was at work. Yes. So you did take a little gig to kind of make some ends meet. Can you speak to that and like what that was like and how your thinking was at that moment?
Sure. So, let's see. After graduation, I decided to kind of take a break from applying to full-time 9-to-5 positions. And I knew that student loans were about to, start entering repayment. And I was worried about that. And so I said, you know what, just to make ends meet, I'm going to get a job at Old Navy. And it wasn't what I was expecting to do, but I did that for about a month. And I'm glad I did. I think it was very humbling. And I think in that I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about my, just my general resilience for things. And yeah, after that though, I ended up moving on from that, and I ended up doing informational interviews once I left that job. And that, I think, was kind of my biggest motivator in this whole season of 2020. Just connecting with other Wake alumni through LinkedIn, and having those informational interviews kind of switched the power dynamic to where, now I'm the person who's, kind of guiding the conversation. And it kind of got me used to talking to, professional adults again. But this way kind of switched. And so yeah, I think it was a big confidence booster for me. And then after that, I ended up getting another temporary position with the Small Business Administration. And then around that time I was also applying to more jobs. And then eventually I landed the role that I currently am about to start.
Okay, you can go ahead and say that now.
Yeah. So I'm going to be a public health communications research analyst for a nonprofit research institute in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina.
Look at that smile as she says it. I love it. And now, Kaylin Stewart-Meese, this is for you. Tell me where, you were going to check for gigs. Where are you going to go check for your opportunities? Where did you click?
So the OPCD sent out newsletters, kind of sending out an email blast with employers who were hiring, and they did this all throughout the fall, all throughout the spring. And so I think I initially heard about the company back in early spring, like March or April. And so I went and I checked out their website, and I was like, okay, I feel like I qualify for some of these, But for some reason, I put it off, and I didn't end up applying. But I subscribed to their newsletter, and so that's how I ended up finding out about the position that I applied for and have now. But initially, I do have to thank the OPCD at Wake Forest for even pointing me in their direction.
So for both Kaylin and Cooper, I'm very inspired by both your stories and the way you persevered. And to me, that's very Wake. And I guess what I would ask you are kind of two questions, and you choose which one you want to answer. But advice that you would have for parents who are listening on ways they can be supporting their students. And if their students are stuck, what's some advice that you would have?
Yeah, I think just first off, just staying positive and the encouragement. That was a big thing for me. Like I said, with my parents was, I got pretty down on myself around that May, April kind of time period. And like I said, it was my parents that kind of, pushed me to, talk to people. And that was a big thing for me, was I kind of just the lack of personal contact due to COVID. Just kind of caused me to kind of get out of the loop when it came to networking and informational interviews and things like that. So I think, that's a big thing, is just positive encouragement and, trying to help them out with connections and things of that nature.
Perfect. Thank you. So just kind of continuing baby steps. Cooper, is that sort of what I'm hearing? Like just one at a time, kind of, and letting your folks support you, exactly. Kind of and encourage you. Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Kaylin, how about you? What would you say?
If your student hasn't already, encourage them to take a break. I think in addition to taking up that job at Old Navy, whenever I took that break immediately after graduation, that kind of allowed me to kind of refuel myself. And that was extremely, extremely helpful. And I think also, April, March, that was a very rough time for me, and I didn't feel like I was myself. And so I think it's important to kind of take some time to recharge yourself and kind of get back to that place of peace, happiness, like letting out a really good laugh, because that's the kind of energy that's going to help drive you in continuing to apply to different places. And it's also going to help you in your interviews as well. And I think that being more relaxed and coming from a place of calm and peace really helped in this last interview that I had for this company. And so definitely encourage your students to take a break if they haven't already.
I saw Cooper nodding a little bit while you were saying that, Kaylin. And my last thing I would ask you about is, there's a lot of negative out in the world right now about the job market and the economy and all those things. And you actually did something that I thought was very wise in terms of what you fed your brain.
Yeah, so I know that on TV and on news stations, it talked a lot about the economy and how there's not that many jobs out there, but I just ignored that. I guess just staying connected on LinkedIn. And then also, social media has a lot of encouraging pages that talk about, positivity and mental health and self-care and those things. And so that's kind of where I gravitated towards. And then also on LinkedIn, there's lots of students who are still finding jobs who also are recent grads and things. And so seeing other people be successful, and then also kind of keeping myself level-headed with, just positive social media posts and things. That's kind of what I chose to consume. So, yeah.
Cooper, I saw you nodding while Kaylin was saying that. What kind of kept you on course?
Yeah, I liked the part about, kind of keeping away from the news, because like she said, LinkedIn, there's a lot of positive and good things on there, which, I didn't realize. So that was definitely a good thing. And just, like she said, just staying positive and, surrounding yourself with positive messages, things like that.
Cooper, Kaylin, congratulations. We are so happy to be able to celebrate this with you, and we are so glad that you shared your stories with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you guys both so much for being with us. I have a few more questions to ask a few of our panelists, but I want to say one of the things that, Kaylin, you described, I can definitely tell, like, you understand the cycle of having to deal with a real hard situation. As have you, Cooper, too, just sort of having something or thinking you should have something and then being really down in the dumps and recognizing that you need to get to that place where you have the energy and the will to actually sort of fight the fight. And that until you get to that place, it's hard to do it. So I think just your ability to talk about it now and share it with everyone is really powerful, because I'm sure there are some recent grads out there who are feeling that way. And I'm sure for parents, we're all, totally stressed when our child is feeling really stressed. And so then we don't know what to do. And there is a part of it, which is like, how do we help our child to get to a resource or a person who can be of help? And so I do think that's really important. And then once you're in that place, then you sort of, like, you did something that I think Allison talks a lot about. How can you be intentional? How can I choose what actually I'm taking in that fills me with energy and joy, of which you needed to get that rest to then go do that. And so you surround yourself with friends, you think about the information you're taking in, and you laugh, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm going to choose that. And I do think that's really important for a lot of people. Sometimes we lapse into a certain channel of just doing the same old thing, and we can't get to that positive side. And then all of a sudden, lots of good things can start to happen. As much as the market definitely is hard, it's not impossible. That's one thing you're proving, and one thing we're trying to tell, I think, all the parents out there. It's, yes, the market's tough, and you have to be very smart about how you approach it, but there are a lot of things internal going on with every single student. Maybe one of the questions, actually, I'd love to turn to Catherine is, we've talked a little bit about one of the barriers that oftentimes students have is that until I know what I want, I don't want to go call people back at Wake Forest, because I don't want to sound like I don't know what I want. And can you talk a little bit about, like, what it took for you to go from being in that place to actually taking a step forward? Because you too were sort of in that kind of process too.
Sure. Yes, I came into Wake Forest excited to explore all of the many opportunities that were there, and was interested in a lot of things. And so I thought that I couldn't walk into the OPCD because, I wasn't prepared enough. I wouldn't be impressive enough. And it was actually a friend who I mentioned something about needing my resume reviewed, but I didn't even know where to start. And it was actually a friend who just said, it's easy. All you have to do is book an appointment on Handshake. And so he showed me how to book an appointment on Handshake and meet with a career coach. And from there, I was fine. You know, he didn't need to walk me into the door of the OPCD and introduce me to someone. All he had to do was show me how to book an appointment. And so I think that just goes to show that it's baby steps. I think that was something that helped me a lot in the spring and summer. Is just you just have to do the next right thing. And so I think parents can be really helpful in just kind of being the smiling face that kind of opens the door to the student to walk through. You don't necessarily have to hold their hand the whole way because they've learned a lot at Wake Forest and they're really capable. But your encouragement and guidance kind of to the next right thing can be really, really helpful for them.
Yeah, I like that notion of how can, as a parent, you be encouraging even in the face of challenging information. So that information could be the market's rough and the media is telling you there's nothing out there, the unemployment rate's dropping or going, whatever, spiraling, going up and down, the stock market's going up and down, and your own child is actually all confused. The more that you can actually say, you can do it, like it's possible, like I believe in you, I believe actually it's possible. Even if you don't totally, like you have to sort of be in that place as opposed to being sort of critical about like over analyzing everything and actually like being critical that your child's not doing enough, because they need someone who's on their team. And that person, I think, has to be their parents. So that is something I think it's an interesting role. I think about imagining being a football coach where your team's maybe not the most talented team and maybe isn't predicted to win the championship. You don't go in every game thinking I'm not going to win the game. You go in the game like we're going to do the best we can to try to win the game. And I think that's a little bit of what we have to have that attitude with our own children in this time, especially where it feels like everything's up against you, even if you went to an amazing school like Wake Forest. It's just that's the way it feels. So I definitely think that's an interesting challenge. All right, I'm gonna sort of circle around really quickly and just see. I think there's some questions in the Q&A. Before we go to that, I would like to go around and maybe allow first. I'll go to Stuart, then Allison and Heidi. Maybe each one of you can say, given what the students have actually talked about, like what are some things that you think of that are either important things to highlight or insights that actually you want to mention? I know that one question that came up in the Q&A earlier was just this issue of there's some students who've gotten either delayed offers or rescinded offers. Do you have a position on that or anything that you want to say about that? Could you sort of one of you talk about that too? So Stuart, I'll go to you first. Well, he might have frozen.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
All right. Sorry for being kicked off a number of times, but yeah, the common trend pre-COVID is, especially with a lot of your big four accounting firms and others, is that they typically don't want to start their associates there until September or October. And so if you're graduating.
Oh, you just went mute. There you go.
So there's a long period of time there between graduating and then starting. And especially it's troubling for people if they have financial issues that they have to take care of to support themselves for 4 or 5 months leading up to that. However, during COVID, we've seen that companies wanted to hold the talent that they had acquired and move it out a few months to give them more time to where the economy may turn a little bit and they may have more business with that. We have pretty strong statements on reneging on offers or continuing to interview. If you've accepted an offer, you filled out the first destination survey, then we basically turn off your Handshake account to prevent that from happening, to be fair, not only to our employers, but to other students that may be looking as well. I've kind of, in a previous institution, I would kind of explain it to like dating or engaged to be married, that if we're engaged to get married and the venue you wanted to use was not available for 2 to 3 months, you wouldn't go around and start dating someone else, would you? Just because it's 2 to 3 months from getting your venue. So it's the same thing kind of with an employer, is that you want to stay committed to them, because we often times in the recruiting circle, it's a small network of individuals, especially if you're going to stay in the industry. And if they see that you've done that, I've seen many times to where it's come back to get a student because they have continued to interview. Now, when you throw in cultural differences, you know, that complicates things a little bit more. If you're from another country, you may not think that that's a big issue, but here in the States and policies we have, you know, we want people to remain consistent to their commitments.
Stuart, that was an incredibly memorable analogy or metaphor, whichever one that we call it, but I will not forget that one, because actually I thought you were going to say, would I go date someone else? But actually, you know, I guess I sort of lost. I was like, okay, wow, you got me there. So anyways, thank you for that great analogy. I do know that for us, we really do care, because a lot of these companies we actually have recruiting relationships with. And because of that, the main thing is that we want to make sure that we don't lose those recruiting relationships because of the fact, you know, people do things where they might actually like take other jobs that they've already been accepted for. So if people feel like they're under that type of situation, come talk to us. Like, that's most important. We can help you think about, is that the right thing to do? How to manage the process? Maybe it actually is the right thing to do, but we'd rather do it where we're with you and helping you rather than not. So anyways, thank you. That was a great answer. Allison, how about you? What's your one big thought, you know, one sort of conclusion you're drawing from what the student said?
Just to reiterate what a lot of people here have said, it's something that we say all the time out of my office, is that we all need people to be successful. And I think especially in this moment when we're all feeling a little isolated and distant from people, is to, you know, for the parents, right? Like, how can you help your students, your young professionals, your young alumni, but then also there's a whole team of people here on campus who are available to support and to guide and to coach and all of that. So let's not forget about that too.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Heidi, there was a question that came in the Q&A. I was wondering if you'd be okay answering it. How have we activated the Wake Forest Alumni Network regarding internships and entry-level jobs for 2020 grads? And if you don't feel like you can pass it to Stuart. He might have an answer, but, and you're on mute too.
Maybe I'll answer part of it, and then I'll have Stuart will do a duet. So in terms of activating the alumni network, our alumni are eager to be helping. In fact, we've done a couple of alumni panels. We did 2 in August, we did another in July, and to an alum, they said, call me, let me help you. So we've been trying to activate those alumni in areas of interest. I would say secondarily, and I thought a little bit about this when Kaylin and Cooper were talking, but if someone is applying at, let's just say L'Oreal, and that comes to mind because I just spoke to one of our alums there. If you're going to apply up into the company portal, you absolutely then must go ahead and see where our alumni are at that organization, because they can do an internal recommendation, which might actually even get them like a $1,200 bonus. I liken it to basketball, which is once you shoot, you follow your shot. So apply and then find those people who can go ahead and help you from that side. So I thought a little bit about that with activating our alumni. And then I would say it is rare that one of our students reaches out to an alum and that they don't reach right back out and offer so much help. We are a small school, and that makes us very fierce about helping one another. It is one of the very most beautiful things about this community. So I would say that's one of the ways we've been activating the alumni network. And Stuart, then I'm going to pass it over to you because I think you've got more to say too.
Well, whoever asked that question, I mean, that's the day in, day out, how we navigate employee relations, is finding a connection to an alum or parent or some other contact that we may have. So it's not just post-COVID for class of 2020, but it's for every class every week of the year, whether we're in COVID or not. And I would say that coming from a large public institution, what was going for us there is you had a critical mass of individuals. Yeah, you had a lot of alums, but the recruiters were coming because of the types of majors that were being produced in the large quantities. This is a engineering school. And on the flip side, with Wake Forest, is you have a lot fewer students. In order to compensate that, I can't think of any other organization that better leverages its network, whether it's parents, whether it's students, alums, you name it. And so that is just baked into the fabric of how we normally operate on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
Thanks, Stuart. And yes, and thank you all for asking that question. I think the key thing, as Heidi said, is that we tend to think about tapping the network by being very focused and targeted so that the actual connection is really personal, as opposed to, hey, all you alumni, give us jobs and we'll find students for jobs. Because reality is we don't have that many students who are looking in numbers. And also the students actually really have certain things they really want to get. So we actually really do a lot of focus on that. And Allison actually is running a program with Heidi and Stuart's teams where we're actually identifying students who've worked with coaches. So again, your students should be working with a coach if they can. If they want to talk to some certain alums, we know what they want. We can actually find those alums to talk to them and help them through the process. So it's that tailor is how we do that, because we know these students, they have to be ready when they go talk to the alumni. It's not just one of the keys is you don't just send an alum and say, hey, I'm looking for a job. Can you help me? We have a whole method about how we actually introduce ourselves to people. You can find it all on our website. And it's really important that we do it in a certain kind of way where you're actually building a relationship first, and then you start to help each other. And then before things like just sort of unfolds from there. So I'm going to wrap up just one really quick question to our recent grads. I just want to ask if there's one thing you could say to either a fellow recent grad in your class or to their parents about what advice you might give them, or a good word that would give them some hope and inspiration. What comes to mind? So how about we start with Cooper, you go first.
Yeah, I mean, I would just bring it back to keeping your mind in a good place, surrounding yourself with positivity and utilizing the resources that, both Wake Forest and those around you can provide. Great. Thanks, Cooper. How about you, Kaylin?
I would say do informational interviews. They are a big mood booster, I'm telling you. And it's also kind of fun meeting new people. And you're also at the same time building your network and exploring different avenues as to what you may want to do with, like different people who may be working in the industry you want to be in. So.
Awesome. Great way to go. How about you, Catherine?
I think something that I've learned a lot about recently is just the importance of kind of diversifying and building onto your toolkit. If you have a belt and you're kind of adding all these tools to it, and that can be done by informational interviews, that can be done by, you can still make appointments with career coaches as alums. They can help you. And I guess the most valuable thing that you can get from that is really confidence. The more you know about something, the more you feel confident about things as simple as your resume. That can kind of give you a really important method of getting a job is confidence. And so all those little things really add up.
That's great. Well, to everyone who's out there, again, thank you so much for joining us. We hope this was incredibly helpful for you. There was one final question that I thought was really interesting, which was, if I have a recent grad who has a fellowship or an internship through the July of 2021, what would I do? Like, when should I start looking for a job? And to me, we always, and this being at Wake Forest, the earlier you start, the better you'll be. And it's not necessarily looking for a job now, right? One would be reading 5 of your first 5, like make sure you do well in this fellowship, build networks with people, find a great place to live, and build your own community of mentors. It would include actually, what are the skills that, given where you want to go, that you actually need to build, whether it be doing certificate programs or reading certain things that'll help you to actually be able to move in that direction. The more that you actually build that foundation and more tools while you're in this fellowship, the easier it's going to be to get a job. You might actually have it well before July 2021. So there's no reason to wait. It doesn't mean you're formally looking, but you're actually always working on building your career. And as you can tell, we care about you building a really, really fulfilling life and being thriving. And so we're really proud of our recent grads. I'm really proud of the team members I have. Gosh, I can't tell you, there aren't better people in the country doing the work that we get to do. And I just feel I get to learn so much being with them and create things with them. And we really want to help your recent grads. So please help them get reconnected with us. Take a look at all those programs that are coming out of our Alumni Personal Career Development Center.
and just be engaged, be in community with us. We actually want to be part of your lives, and we want to help them get together and connect with their classmates and with other people who can help them. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Brad, do you have any other things you need to do to wrap up?
No, not at this time. Sorry, I was just kind of responding.
I just wanted to make sure.
I want to thank everybody for their time and everybody for kind of being able to kind of hang in there and hear some things. I know it's a tough time all around the country, an unusual set of circumstances, but as you've heard tonight, you've got people in this office that are there for you as a student, as a graduate, and as a member of the Wake Forest community, both for parents and for young alumni. So thank you very much to everybody that participated. Andy and your group, thank you so much for your time.